So anyway, we're pleased that you would come up, James, and just update us, let us know what's going on. We can build some momentum if we can get raise some money, raise some awareness to what we're doing with the challenge and the constitutional questions. So without any further ado, I'll introduce our state party chairman and my friend, James Evans.
All right, so anytime they say there are checks, I'm here. No, but I look forward to coming up here anytime I get an opportunity to explain what's going on. And when you can ask questions, if we replicate this probably 50,000 more times, then Count My Vote is just, will fall by the wayside. So basically what Count My Vote has is they have a narrative, and they have the access to advance that narrative. And what we have to do as a party is respond with the actual facts and the truth. And that's where the challenge is. So I'll start with some basic assumptions that Count My Vote has placed out there, which are easily disprovable. And one is the caucus convention system is the result of low voter turnout. Now, so let's think about that for a minute. The caucus convention system, we select our candidates, and then our candidates go to the general election ballot, right? Then the Democrats do the same thing, and any other political party. So the fact that you have Republicans and Democrats primarily on the general election ballot, then the voters go out and vote. So how does that lead to low voter turnout? So if you just a little bit of critical thinking, then you can start asking some questions. That means if we're one of the few states that has a caucus convention system, a caucus system, then that means we should be at the bottom for voter turnout, because they've already defined our nominating system as the problem. Well, it turns out we're smack dab in the middle for voter turnout. So then is it the caucus convention system that causes low voter turnout, or is it something else? Well, if you can write a check for $1.5 million and then you got the media on your side, you can just keep saying that and people will start to believe it. And so we're pushing back on that, one interview at a time as I come to these meetings, and then we'll use social media. But our responses have to be concise. And that is that the nominating system, no nominating system is the result of low voter turnout. The result of a low voter turnout is whether you have a competitive two-party system. That determines low voter, whether you're going to have high voter turnout or not. So I'm not in the business of advocating for a strongly Democratic Party. So I'm not going to push for that. So what we did is we compared all one-party dominant states and the voter turnout there. So we took Hawaii and just start naming them, Idaho, Nevada, Montana, just all of the states that are one-party dominant, and say, how does Utah rank within that system? Well, when you compare one-party dominant states, Utah ranks in the upper quartile for voter turnout. But yet, we're the only one that has the caucus convention system and within those states. So if the premise were correct, that it's because of our nominating system, we should be at the bottom, because then we've controlled for every variable. We only use one-party dominant states, and then the only thing that's different is the nominating system, whether it's a primary or if it's a caucus convention. All the other states are primary states, so therefore, that's what they were pushing for, right? It's primary. So that means we should be at the bottom, but we're not. We're in the upper quartile. But facts don't mean anything to Count My Vote. They just have a narrative and they keep advancing it. So response number one, low voter turnout or voter turnout in general is not dependent upon a state's nominating system. The number one factor for voter turnout is whether you have a competitive two-party system or a three-party system, or whatever it's going to be. But you have to have intense competition. That drives turnout. That drives the voters' interest. Have you ever gone to a game where you had a #1 ranked team versus the last place team? You look in the audience and there's rarely anybody there. If you ever go to a Jazz game and it's just they're playing a team that's just right at the bottom, people don't show up because they already know what the outcome's going to be. And the Jazz are going to win, so I'm not going to go to that. But if it's a team that's very competitive, everyone wants to go because that's the excitement. That who's going to win? I'm going to be a part of this now. I'm going to cast my ballot. That drives voter turnout. So we've started to push back on that narrative. And then the one that I think is the most offensive, where I'm actually going to demand an apology from Count My Vote, is they said that they've implied that there was something nefarious within the political parties, primarily with the Republican Party, that somehow we were doing something wrong. So I went back to just look at what were we doing over the decades. Well, tens of thousands of volunteers, I'm only going to talk about Republicans, not Democrats, tens of thousands of Republicans gave of their time, free of charge, to help get candidates that received the nomination, Republican nomination, to help to get them elected to office. So I'm looking at the conspiracy. Is there a conspiracy in that? Is there something I'm missing? So I mean, I really went back to the basics. So tens of thousands of people came together in various forms to try to just get our candidates elected to office. Well, I don't know if you can organize a conspiracy with tens of thousands of people, but basically, Count My Vote said that we did something wrong by doing that. And I'm asking, what is the wrong? So really what they're saying is, it's time to punish you for being too successful. So what we did is, we've increased our ranks in the legislature. We're now 63 Republicans out of the 75-member House. We are 24 state senators out of 29 Senate seats. We're all congressional delegation, that's Republican. All statewide office holders are Republican. Then you replicate that amongst all the counties. And they're saying...
Time out. And the first time ever, all Republicans in Weber County were sworn in this January.
Okay.
It's never happened in Weber County.
Excellent.
This year. So, that's what they're saying is wrong. I mean, apparently, because we've become too successful. So you've heard the argument. The argument has been, well, since all of the races are settled pretty much at the caucus convention system, therefore, we need more people to have a say in who the Republican nominees are. So let's think about that for a second. Do you want more people to have a say, or do you want more Republicans to have a say? See, that's the difference. Well, it appears, when you look at the language in SB54, it ends up that you can have more people have a say, not just Republicans. So I'm just going to quickly run through SB54. The initiative, the Count My Vote initiative's language was taken word for word, misspellings, grammatical errors and all, and placed into SB54. And then the rest of the language was written. So basically what SB54 says is, to the political parties, by November 15, you have to notify us on whether you're going to participate in the primary. And then you have to let us know which path you want to take. There are two paths. The Count My Vote path is actually the initiative language, which says, in part, that you don't have to be a registered Republican to get the Republican nomination, but you have to get your signatures from registered Republicans. Okay? So that's that path. So you don't have to be a registered Republican, but if you go get enough signatures from registered Republicans, then you can have that nomination. So the unaffiliated voter can just go and say, I prefer the Republican ballot for state senate. And that's what they'll sign up for. It doesn't say they have to be a registered Republican. We have no say in that under SB54. The other path, which is called the QPP, the Qualified Political Party path, says if we select that,
we have to have some changes made within our procedures. One being that you have to have a 65% vote threshold at your convention. You have to have an alternate delegate option available, or you have to have a remote voting option available. And there's some other changes we would have to make. But on that path, you must be a registered Republican, but you don't have to have registered Republicans sign your petition. So you can have unaffiliated voters sign your petition, and if you get on the ballot, you can have unaffiliated voters vote for you in the primary. So one says you don't have to be a registered Republican, but you need registered Republicans to sign your petition, and then the primary is a closed primary for Republicans only. The other one says you have to be a registered Republican, but you can have unaffiliated voters sign your petition, and the primary is open, so you can have unaffiliated voters vote for you. So which poison do you take? Pretty much is the options there. That's SB54 as currently enacted into law. Now, there are several just problems in general with that. Like, number one, I would like, on the one hand, to make sure that registered Republicans are actually the ones who can become the candidate. And on the other hand, while it recognizes registered Republicans can only run for that for Republican office, I would like for Republicans to be the ones that determine who the Republican nominee is. So, there are difficulties in both ways. So, since none of that works well for the party, we had no choice but to then file suit on a host of reasons, but the primary reasons are this, is that what the legislature chosen to do, or count my vote, had they gotten it through their initiative and the voters voted on it, is simply said, we're going to substitute our judgment for yours. So what we're saying is, what the product has, the end product of your process is not something that we agree with. Essentially, that's what they're saying. Because for them to say we want to change the nominating process, and the arguments that have been used for that is because we want to increase voter turnout. Well, the sponsor of SB54 even conceded that it won't increase voter turnout. So if even the sponsor concedes it won't increase voter turnout, then that can't be a rationale for changing the nominating system. So as we listen to the debates more and more, and enough, let's see here, the courts has said, okay, what is a rational basis for us to conclude that you took this action mindset? And that is, if it's not voter turnout, then what is it? What is the compelling interest for the legislature to reach in and say, this is so important, we need to have a say in how you select your nominees? So that's what the court needs to answer. So if we can show that it won't increase voter turnout, then the next argument they would say is, well, because we pay for the primary. Well, that's not sufficient because the government puts in a nickel for something that a private citizen or organization does not mean that private citizen or organization gives up their constitutional rights. See? So it can't be just because they pay for it. That's not, because if that were the case, they could be in all of our business, because they're always doing something for us, right? Okay, we drive on the road. That's paid by public dollars, right? So maybe they could say, we need to see what's in your car just because you drive on the road. I mean, they can start coming up with all kinds of rationales. But the one that I like to use is, how many of you have attended the Days of 47 parade? Okay? It's a private organization, right? And who decides the floats? Who makes that determination, what floats, or who can participate in the parade? Well, is that organization, right? Well, imagine, let's take Salt Lake City, and because of the makeup of Salt Lake City, it's extremely liberal. Imagine if they said, well, wait a minute, our tax dollars are paying for this parade because they're using the streets and the police are getting paid overtime, and they can come up with all kinds of rationale for saying public dollars are being used to put on this event or to pay in part for this event. So therefore, City Council, if Days of 47 are going to use this, our streets, we want to have a say in which floats can be in the parade. In other words, because they're not letting us in the parade, so we want to have a vote. That's basically what's going on here. That would be a similar logical argument of saying just because tax dollars are being used, the government should have a say. And that can't be. So the question then would be, what's the compelling interest of the government to reach in to the Days of 47 and say, we need to have a say in how you select who participates in your parade? And that's what the court looks at. The court has to say, okay, really, okay, government, do you really have a compelling interest to interfere with the private organization's constitutional rights, of freedom of expression, of freedom of association? It has to be something that's so compelling that they're essentially abridging our rights. And we have examples of that. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater, right? Because the compelling interest there is that if you allow that to happen, you can have this pandemonium and chaos and people can end up losing their lives. So that's a compelling state interest. So we look, so then our lawyers went through line by line on this bill and this law and have been able to determine example after example where the state doesn't have a compelling interest, other than the fact that it comes down to one rationale. And that rationale is simply this. They want to substitute their judgment for ours. What we have said as a private organization, through our actions, is that the caucus convention system is a process that we believe gives us a representative result of what it is we stand for. That we like the fact that we can interview the candidates, that we can determine if they represent our platform, that there's an opportunity to really study, whatever our rationale is, it's ours because we're a private organization, okay? So, and the result of this process has been, we have a relatively conservative group of legislators and office holders. Well, Count My Vote has said, we don't like that because there are not enough moderates that are in elected office. And these moderates cannot win if we don't change the system. Well, that's substituting their viewpoint or their judgment for the private organization's judgment. And the courts say you can't do that without a compelling state interest. So that's what we're taking to court. That's the argument that is going before the judge. What compelling state interest is there for the legislature, the force of law, to reach into our private organization and then say, we need to change the nominating process so that we can have more moderates?
So when you say a compelling state interest, what would that encompass? What would it have to take?
That's what the state has to prove, not us. The state has to prove why they were so compelled to interfere with our First Amendment rights. You see, all we have to say is they don't have a right to reach in, and we can demonstrate how we've been harmed by this action. The state has to then say, no, this was so compelling, so important, Your Honor, this is why we had to reach in. So you heard them test their arguments. You heard they said that, well, there are not enough women delegates. They floated that. That the caucus convention system, not enough people can participate. Well, we have quickly addressed that by allowing absentee ballot voting, right? And the reason for that is because we absolutely agree. If you want to participate, but for some reason you're at work or in service to others or in the military and you can't physically be there, we have an opportunity for you to participate. okay? So that completely neutralized that argument right there. But not only that, that was the right thing to do, okay? Because we want as many people to participate as want to participate. Yes?
Is the Democratic Party, the Independent Party, the Libertarian Party, the Green Party, are they public entities or private entities?
No, we're all private entities.
All private.
Yeah, the Constitution Party has also joined the lawsuit. They filed a motion to intervene, which means that they're saying we want our rights protected as well. I met with the Democratic Party chair and made the case for why they should participate in this lawsuit. And the chair agrees that with the rationale, but he said, James, rarely is there an opportunity for me to be the good guy, so we're not going to participate because we want to be liked, basically. He says, look, you know, you have the business community against you on this, so we're going to sit this out, and he says, and I reserve the right to take my pot shots at you. And I said, well, go for it. Because, so they're not looking at the principle of it, they're just saying, we don't have anything to lose. So,
Yeah, when would they do that?
yeah, so, yeah, let's beat the group, yeah.
But
So,
the back is actually, was on our side on that.
yeah, but the business community quickly got them to, so the Count My Vote co-chairs are, it depends on which press release you look at, but generally it's Gail Miller and Norma Matheson. So you got Jim Matheson's mother as a co-chair of Count My Vote trying to dictate to the Republican Party on how we nominate our candidates. So what's wrong with this, you know? So it's these
Is that why
kinds.
the chamber falls behind them as well?
Yeah, so all of the chamber and all of them have gotten, and I'm actually going to get to that because we had some interesting meetings there. But basically, from this, if you focus in on the legal argument, the court has to make its case of why making this change, and then the other term is, first of all, why is it viewpoint neutral, and what's the compelling state interest? So we think they're going to have a difficult time making a case for why it's a compelling state interest, because paying for the primary is not going to fly. You know, you don't give up your constitutional rights for that. And second, our other second strong argument is it wasn't viewpoint neutral. The sponsor of the bill clearly made the case that this would not increase voter turnout. So then, and then it's been enough comments about we need a more moderate, you know, legislature, all these sorts of things. So when you talk about viewpoint neutral, the easiest way to explain it is this. Imagine if the voting ended at 5 p.m. Who's the recorder clerk in here? That we had
I'm the recorder.
Oh, you have a separate clerk. right?
Recorder,
Yes, yeah, okay. Well, imagine if all of the county clerks got together in their association and said, okay, we know voting closes at 5 p.m., but we have lines around the building, so we really need to extend it to 7 p.m. And then they made that case to the legislature that the reason for changing the voter turnout, extending voting from 5 to 7 is because we have long lines. That is a viewpoint neutral request. I mean, when the legislature takes it up, they recognize the rationale for the argument, which is, well, why should we change the time? Well, we're changing the time because the lines are wrapped around the building. So that's the rationale for the change. They accept that rationale, then they move about taking action through the force of law to make that happen. That's called viewpoint neutral. Now, if the clerks got together and said, we need to extend this, the voting time from 5 to 7 p.m. because most of the Republicans aren't getting there until 5 o'clock, and we need to make sure Republicans can vote. And the legislature says, okay, we'll change the law to 7 p.m. That's not viewpoint neutral, because that's changing the law to advantage a particular point of view, and that's not constitutional. So anytime the legislature acts, it has to be viewpoint neutral. It can't be for some particular political benefit or a rationale, you know, and disadvantage another. See, because the equal argument would be the Democrats say, no, keep it at 5 because that benefits us. It can't be either. This has to be, it's based on the fact that we just have too many people waiting to vote, okay? So I think we were able to make the case that the rationale for Count My Vote has been they simply want a different political makeup in the legislature and other elected offices. And if that's what they want, they can't ask the government through the force of law to make that happen. That's not constitutional. So that's another one of our major arguments here. And also, we can't be harmed for simply being successful. I mean, we're successful because we went out and convinced people to vote for us. And it's not because of our nominating system. It's just because we worked hard and most Utahns happen to agree with our political philosophy. Now, we're at a point where those within our party are saying, yeah, but we don't like this element. We want more of this. Well, that's not the job of the government to make that determination. That's a determination we would have to make. So Count My Vote said, you know what, we think that we're not able to get enough moderates because the caucus convention system doesn't lend itself for our supporters to come out. Well, we've actually recognized that argument, and that's why we've done absentee ballot voting. That's another thing. It says, look, we don't want to preclude anyone. Whatever we have to do to help make sure every Republican can show up, we want to do that. And may the best person win. Okay, we're not trying to preclude one or the other or advantage one or the other. We're a party, and let the competition of ideas win today. Because we believe the competition of ideas will simply be a more conservative result because that's the makeup of our state. So you can't artificially, you can't artificially create a makeup that doesn't represent who we are. And coincidentally, when you look at the makeup of the legislature, it almost to a percentage tracks the political makeup of the state of Utah. We looked at how many conservatives are in the legislature, well, very conservative, and moderate conservatives. And it almost matches exactly the makeup of our voting population. So then the real question is, and this is where we get a little bit into conspiracy, what really is behind this? I mean, really, who spends $1.5 million to attack a bunch of volunteers? Okay, who does that? I mean, and for what reason? Well, we know who does it, but I mean, for what reason? Well, it turns out that if you're using money, you can always look for money, because that's what at the end of the day. Well, the current, our former system, until we can get it back, the caucus convention system has really been very effective at making sure our legislature did not raise taxes needlessly. That it became the last option for legislators, not the first option. That if they were going to have to raise taxes or expand government, it was just a grueling process. It was not easy. So our legislators always had this easy out, and I'm sure somebody here probably has used it once or twice. It's just every legislator. When I was in the state senate, I used it too. So, and that is, I would really, and it's hard when you've got people coming up asking you for stuff, and they're just so sympathetic, and you just want to give them the last dollar out your pocket because you just feel for them. It was so easy to say, I really would like to help you, but, I can't. I mean, I'm going to have to face my delegates, and this is not something that they would support. So you always had an out by blaming your delegates. And that's what they're using. They're trying to say, well, if these delegates weren't there, we could get taxes raised. And that's what they're trying to, that's what this comes down to is, how can we change the makeup of the legislature politically? How can we get more moderate Republicans in there, more legislators that are more receptive to raising taxes for a host of reasons? Raise taxes for education, raise taxes for transportation, raise taxes for fill in the blank, is what they're wanting to do, okay? Because this is about business. Because if you can raise taxes in the government, you're going to spend it on something. And who's going to be on the receiving end of all of those contracts and other opportunities? Who will be on the receiving end of that? maybe people who belong to the Chamber of Commerce. No, this is talking, because, right? I mean, so this is a business transaction for most of them, and they see the caucus convention system as an impediment to the progress of government. Meaning that they want government to be able to grow, they want government to be able to expand, because they sincerely believe that that's needed. And I think delegates also believe that it's needed, but it needs to be done in a prudent and responsible way. And that translates to not excessively, and that gets into the way of people's business plans. And this is where we're at, and so this helps to explain why somebody would spend $1.5 million to take on a system so that they can start where their money would have extraordinary leverage. Because right now, and I can give you example after example of legislators that have told me, look, when the people from the business community come and says, look, we need you to support this tax increase, we tell them we're not going to do it, or our delegates won't support it, and they said, well, if you don't support this, we'll get somebody to run against you, or we'll fund your opponent. And that candidate, that incumbent can say, well, it doesn't matter, because it doesn't take a whole lot of money to win. And because I can go to each one of my delegates and explain my position. So you can spend all the money you want. That's never going to be a one-on-one conversation. And that is the weapon that they wanted to remove from the political equation. And if you can remove that one-on-one connection, then the only leverage that's now available is money to then advertise. And that's what this is about. Because just like we're experiencing with Count My Vote, they have just manufactured one narrative after another, and all they have to do is just keep advancing it. And they don't have to worry about a response to it, because they just figure we can just keep saying it and saying it and saying it, and people will believe it. Yes?
I have a friend down in Nevada, and she ran for county commission. She spent about $20,000, and the incumbent she was running against spent just short of $1 million. And out of 60,000 votes, my friend just lost by 1,026.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and say, and
do you spend that much here in Weaver County?
well, look, I
Not
was just back in Washington, and you want to keep me track on time so that I don't go to, because I can talk about this for the next 5 hours. And I don't want to, but I think it's just important to lay that foundation so you can understand. Now, we were just back at the Republican National Committee meeting last week, and my counterparts there, these chairs are talking about, yeah, for this state Senate seat, we just spent $2.5 million. For a state Senate seat, really? You know, for a U.S. Senate seat, they spent $100 million. I mean, these kinds of numbers are just, I'm like, why are you guys spending all this money? You know, and then you have the national, the state party saying, yep, you know, we're on target for this year. We raised $20 million for our state party. And all kinds of things like that. And that's because they have these primary systems where it's all about the money. And these state chairs are just, they're just on this treadmill. It's like, I got to get this money, then I got to get more money, then I got to get this, and it's because that's the only way you can get your message out. With our system that we had, you can never substitute all of that money for one-on-one. So if you had to make a tough vote, or something that even your district may not appreciate, you had the opportunity to go to the delegate and say, look, this was why we had to do this. And we even went back and looked, and never once have I seen, and the SB54 vote, and even if you remember the Utah Compact when they passed this immigration-friendly, no incumbent lost their re-election, in convention because of that. So delegates can disagree with a particular vote, but delegates have always been more respectful when it's time to make a decision about whether they wanted that candidate, that incumbent back, because they looked at a larger concern. And number two, delegates have never replaced an incumbent in the state convention with someone more conservative. So you go back to Olene Walker. No, go back to Chris Cannon. Chris Cannon lost to Jason Chaffetz, same political stripes. You go to Olin Walker, John Huntsman Jr., and Nolan Karras beat Olin Walker, same political stripes, right? Then you go to Bob Bennett. Bob Bennett, the #1 vote getter was Tim Bridgewater, same political stripes, and Mike Lee came in last of the three. And then Tim Bridgewater was 65 votes shy of getting the nomination outright at 60%. So it was the primary that actually that made Mike Lee senator. It wasn't the delegates. So when they attack the delegates have always been much more, I think, comprehensive in their thought process as they're making decisions about different issues. So they could say, I don't like your SB54 vote, but you're still a good representative or good senator. I don't like your vote on this Utah Compact or those immigration things, but you're still a good senator. And that's what we got in the caucus convention system. Now with this new system, if it prevails, is that you have special interests saying, I need you to vote for this tax increase. You don't vote for it, I'm not writing another check. We'll just give that money to somebody else. See? So while they keep promising more participation, you may have more people coming out to vote, but they're not going to have a real choice because they're not going to even know the candidates. The only candidates are going to know are the ones who could raise the money to advertise their name. And so let's say you have 5 people running for governor and 2 of them are able to get enough money and get on the airwaves, then they're really just voting on 2 of the 5 because they don't know the other 3. And so we're going to become like every other state where you're going to have a special interest legislature. Everyone there is being sponsored by somebody's special interest. Or they have enough of their own money that they can get into office. Okay? But anybody for anybody, just regular people who just want to go and serve, go figure something else out to do.
James, so at the first of the year, when the law came into effect, the party filed an injunction to stop the implementation of that?
And that hearing is going to be February 10th.
Okay.
Yeah.
And anything else going along the process of that? Is the injunction the only thing on?
Well, the injunction is first, and the Attorney General's office is pushing back on that, trying to delay that hearing because they're saying you're not going to be harmed any more today than you will be in March. They're trying to say the harm is what, if you believe you've been harmed, it's not going to change, so let's not have the hearing. But we're insistent on having the hearing. And so that's set for February 10th. They have January 26th is when they need to respond to the court on
Is this
our
a state
injunction.
court or federal court?
No, this is federal. We filed in federal court.
Okay.
Okay? And then after that hearing, if the judge still grants the hearing and moves forward and not listen, because the Attorney General's office did file a motion to basically try to delay the injunction hearing, and our attorneys objected to that, and so now they're going to sit down and have a hearing about the hearing, okay? And then, and we think it's going to stay on schedule, so February 10th, they'll hear the injunction, and then the court will rule on it, and then from there, whatever that ruling is, we anticipate it's a pretty high burden to overcome. So they probably won't grant the injunction, but the other reason for filing it is that we'll get an insight into the judge's thinking process on why they didn't grant it, because they're going to also make comment on the merits of our arguments. And that'll give us some insight in how we can then adjust our arguments, what they're sympathetic to and not sympathetic to. So that gives us a good sense there, and that's the other reason for filing the injunction, is to make sure that we can get a peek into the mind of this judge, And then the case is still moving forward for the lawsuit itself, and that date for hearing hasn't been scheduled because discovery ends at the end of March. So both sides has that amount of time to submit all of the evidence that they want the judge to review, and then we'll see if we're going to actually have a trial date set to have witnesses and all of these sorts of things. So we pushed our convention back to August 1st, they give this court case some time to play out, and we'll have a better sense of what we need to do as a party. And so that's why we thought it prudent to move the convention date back to August 1st to allow some more time for the court process to develop. And the legislature is eagerly awaiting as well, because based on what the court says, then the legislature would have to respond to that. So right now, between all of the, you got the legislative process, you got the court process. The legislative process, we will be at the legislature advocating for changes to SB54, and by change I mean repeal. But we are able to demonstrate where the harms are in the current law, which is non-Republicans running for a Republican position, non-Republicans having a say in who our candidates are. For instance, if you follow it, you can be a registered Republican, like I said, and you can go, you can be a registered Republican, but you can go out and get you can go out and get unaffiliated voters to sign your petition, and you don't even have to go talk to a registered Republican. So therefore, you don't have to care about our platform. And where's the truth in advertising of that? So we have no say in any of this, other than the state has now went out and told people, you can use that brand, you can use Republican. And brand owner, you don't have a say in who uses it. We determine that for you. See, so these are the things we have to get changed. Thank you. Hey?
I see another problem with my voting, that is that people have to go and get others' approval so that they can.
Yeah, the signatures.
Yes. Now, we keep saying, well, we have Republicans run. We have just replaced a man that ran for Senate out of this county. He ran as a Republican, but the day before that he was a Republican, he was a Democrat.
Well, not the day before, it was a little bit before.
No.
No, it's true.
No.
Stuart Reed.
No, Stuart changed his party up.
The day before.
he filed.
He was unaffiliated. The reason why I know is because he used to live in my neighborhood down in Salt Lake, back when he was a Democrat.
Oh, so he was a Democrat, so we got that straight.
He was definitely a Democrat down in Salt Lake, and then he moved up here and started his transition.
Very conservative.
Yeah.
But the
I know what you're
problem
saying.
is
So
that we're not addressing the fact that why does it make a difference if you have signatures or not? It is actually taking the rights of an individual away.
Right, but equally it's taking our rights away. In other words, we right now it says to become, we can't even set conditions on our requirements to run as a Republican. We could before, and afterwards you need to be a registered Republican, and the other requirement is that you read the platform and you sign it. And then you can list what you disagreed with, but those are just basic conditions that we set. We can't do any of that now, other than if someone goes to our convention, but the state, like I said, has substituted their judgment for ours. See, that's at the crux of this, is that, and they're going to have to be able to prove to a court what was so compelling about that you have to go in that far and tell a private organization that your judgment is needed more than their judgment. All we're doing is putting some people forward to go on the ballot, and if you don't like what Republicans are doing, go create your own party and convince people to go run on, support. That's the answer to this, not the state coming in and rearranging what we're doing. Just tell those people to go out and do that. I think,
Well, actually, my question is just a little bit different. It goes back to the convention timing. When you're talking about moving it to August,
Mhm.
would that be an ongoing
No,
time?
no.
or
Not for
subject
this
to
year.
change
No,
every year?
we get to set a convention each year, but in the nominating year, those are already set by some other requirements, like the primary date, and, so we kind of got a compact middle there. But our organizing convention, we really have the opportunity to select that date because we don't have any other requirements. In this case, we would have normally had it in May, but knowing kind of the court schedule, we wanted enough time to see if the court can get this answered before we have our convention. So then we would know what to do. But also our C&B committee had requested more time because they're already looking at several dozen changes that would need to be made. And they need time to vet all of those and develop it so that when we go into convention, whatever changes we need to make, that our delegates aren't walking in there confused or unsure. So we will have enough time to really communicate it. And so when delegates go in, at least they can understand what's going on. And it's not rushed. And you know, if you rush delegates, they're going to just say no. I don't know what's going on, but it's no until I do. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say to your point about the chambers, you know, I'm a Republican and I don't make a habit of bashing business because
Right.
they're a friend.
Right.
But in this case, in this particular situation, the thing that they understand very, very well is advertising,
Mm-hmm.
right? They have this stuff down to a science. If you advertise to a certain level, you can gain a customer.
Right.
And in this case, in the caucus system, they have very little control. They can't write a check to an advertising agency or to a newspaper or whatever and expect that there's going to be control there. Because what I found is, through the caucus system, it's pretty hard to bluff someone in their front room, right? I mean, you either agree with them or you don't. I mean, you are who you are. You're looking them in the eye. You're shaking their hand. It's much harder to bluff somebody in that case than it is by writing a check and putting out a glossy ad or something like that. So this is an opportunity for people who feel like they haven't been able to exercise their control to use that.
Right.
When you add the media to the mix, that's the scariest part to me.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, it took me a while before I figured out, why do they really care? Well, they care because not only do you have to advertise instead of sit in living rooms, but then all of a sudden the editorial boards, they mean something again.
Mm-hmm.
Because they can hammer on a candidate. Believe me, I know. They can hammer on a candidate over and over and over and over again.
But you gotta love those things too.
They got to keep trying.
They did. They did.
It was an
They
empty shot.
And so that's my concern is that we, I mean, every time I turn around in politics, and I agree to a large extent, that we don't want to have too much money involved in the system because then it becomes a challenge. I mean, you have to watch so much closer to make sure your candidate is trustworthy, to make sure that where the money is coming from is a trustworthy source. I mean, all those things are important. I get that. But then we turn around and create a system where it's all based on money, where there's absolutely nothing but money that really matters in the end. And that's the part that's got me scared more than anything. So anyway, can I just ask, that was a lecture, but can I ask one more question? One question, which is simply, what do you, I mean, can you give us your honest opinion on what the chances are of the lawsuit succeeding? And then tell us, and quell our concerns, I think, if nothing else, that we have a secondary track, because this, through the legislature, and what you think the chances are there, because, I mean, we are very concerned that maybe they'll run the time out on the lawsuit and there won't be time for the legislature to make proper adjustments. I mean, and what is your feel as you talk to legislators as to where they are as a whole on this?
Well, just I'll ask the last part first, is that the leadership of the legislature, they feel honor bound to stick with the commitment made. They says, okay, we'll make a deal with you. If you drop your initiative, we'll do this compromise. But to Greg Hughes' credit, for instance, he's made it clear to the Senate leadership, to the governor, and anyone that will listen, that he made that commitment, but that doesn't bound anyone that voted against SB54 or any new members of the legislature. And he will not get in the way of anyone wanting to run any bill that would undermine SB54. So that's that point. About running out the clock, While we don't have control over the court calendar, both our attorneys and the AG's office, they have agreed to go and ask for an expedited hearing. And the courts always grant those. So if both parties are saying, we have to get this answered as quickly as possible, then my own sense is probably around, June, July, we should have an answer, on what the court's ruling is going to be. And to your first part, what do we think the court's going to do? This is just me, and I'm not a lawyer. I think the court will rein in SB54, saying all those things, all those provisions about, telling the parties what they can and can't do. I think they'll find it unconstitutional. But they may well say that if you want to have a primary path, or signature path, yeah, you can do that, that's fine, but you can't tell the parties how to make requirements for their Republican candidates or Democrat candidates.
So they would have to run.
They would have to say, no, they would just say, well, look, if you want to get on the ballot, you have to, your candidates will have to get signatures. But they would have to meet your party's requirements. So we can set up what our requirements are. To be a Republican candidate and just fill in whatever. You have to pay $1,000 to the party. You have to sign our platform. You have to be a registered Republican. You have to meet with our ethics committee. Whatever requirements we want to set to say, this is what you have to do to become one of our candidates. And if you meet that requirement, then you go out and get your signatures. But right now, we have no control over any of that. So I'm saying I think the courts will get it, to that point. But if the legislature says, we want to have a primary path, that may well end up being constitutional. But they can't tell the party what requirements, are needed to be a Republican candidate. That's our decision to make, And we can say, if you go to the convention, you don't have to pay $1,000. If you don't go to the convention, it's going to cost $10,000. I mean, we can then start setting all those different requirements. But they still may come back because our attorneys were saying pretty much they're not going to find one part constitute, they just throw the whole thing out, which is what I'm hoping for. But I figured I would rather set myself up to be happy than disappointed by saying that they're not going to find anything constitutional. So that's just, but they're not going to run out the clock. And the legislature, the backup to the legislature is, if any part of this is found unconstitutional, the legislature does not feel honor bound to uphold SB54 because it was an all or nothing. It was an all or nothing.
So there's no severability clause in it.
Well, the court, because they put a severability in there, doesn't mean that the court recognizes that severability just because it says that it's severable, because the court's going to look and say, wait a minute, every part of this depended on the other part. See, it wasn't, so no, you can't, you can't say, okay, you can go one or two ways, and then you find one part unconstitutional, then it really leaves the other part. It says, no, the intent was to give two options. So now two options aren't available. So no, this whole thing is unconstitutional. Legislature, you have to start over. And generally, that's what they'll end up doing, is saying, this isn't working, so you go back and rewrite this. And then they will instruct the legislature to rewrite this or will rewrite it. So you choose. And generally, 100% of the time, the legislature will say, we'll rewrite it. Okay. Yes.
Okay, so I read an article this week that Senator Jenkins is looking at proposing a bill to the Senate.
Yeah, he has SB 43, and his bill is to close the primary part of SB 54, which is a qualified political party path that allows the primary to be owned, and his bill will close that. And he has another bill, which will be a constitutional amendment that says that the state can't tell parties how to select their nominees. So those are the two bills that he's looking at. And then I think there's some other bills that are being considered. So basically,
There's a plurality bill, I
Yeah.
think that will be coming up, so you could have multiple people on the ballot, somebody could actually be our nominee with less than 50%. That's kind of a flaw in that, and maybe we're going to look at that.
My sense is, from talking to people and putting my ear to the ground, that they're not likely to make a lot of changes, period, in the bill at the legislature. Because if the path is either legal or it's political, right now I don't think there's too much momentum to change a lot of things. In fact, there's probably pushback that says we're not changing anything and we'll deal with the plurality.
So if these bills pass, would that negate the?
It just adjusts it. I mean, it just says that people couldn't be in a primary unless they're Republican, which has already passed that they can be in the primary and not be Republican. So it would just change the bill, but it wouldn't negate it.
Yeah, well, the only thing that Count My Vote is insistent on is keeping a dual path. That's the only thing they care about, is keeping a dual path. And I think there will be open all kinds of negotiations that could take away a lot of the other stuff as long as they can have that signature petition route, you know.
To get on the ballot.
Yeah, to get on the ballot. And that's their Waterloo. And so what we're hoping is that the court finds that unconstitutional. And our hope is that we can get that answered by July, no later than July, so we can prepare, you know.
Is this quite expensive to run through the courts? What is it going to be?
So that's what I'm going to talk about,
Yeah.
because that's why James is here. It's real expensive to run through the courts. The state needs $100,000 minimum just to get through what James has talked about. We have,
And
James
just
is
read
kind
through,
of,
just real quick, just read through all of the things that we handed out, you know, and
so he's got some stuff there. So the reason why we had him come up was not only to learn about it and learn how much it costs, but they've just taken a little bit of an estimate over what these things usually run, and it's probably a conservative, being conservative people, it'd probably be a conservative guess that it'd be $100,000. They've
well,
asked,
the reason is 100, we said 100,000 because we've got a lot of attorney in-kind work that, you know, and so we've really been very, very frugal in trying to find every opportunity to get in-kind work done so that we didn't have to spend that much, and that's how it got down to $100,000.
so our portion of that's $5,500. Our executive committee's been committed to raise the money privately and not use our other sources. A lot of our sources for money tend to be the legislators who voted for SB54, whether they knew what they were getting into or whether we liked it or not. So we've decided that we would raise the money privately and not take it from other sources or our treasury where people weren't really in for a lawsuit. So we've agreed to raise the money. I think we'll be successful doing that. We're halfway there. But if anybody can contribute some, a little bit, $20, $50, $100, whatever you can, we'll take a pledge, we'll take a check, we'll take a promise to pay on the back of the napkin. You can give the names
Girl
to
Scout cookies.
Linda. Linda will take some of these names and we'll continue to keep,
And do your
raising
check
money.
a buck, Penny. If you do your check a buck, remember to do that on your tax return. In your state return, do check a buck, and that money comes to.
That may come to the party, but we're going to raise only specific money for this. We have a firewall up, so check about if you want to raise.
No, I know, but I'm just saying, I always take
Oh,
the
okay.
opportunity to say,
Take check a buck.
do check a buck to.
And we get $4,000 or $5,000 a year from check a buck from Weaver County people. So hit check a buck, money comes to the party. We're happy to have that. So
System been in place,
119 years.
119.
But there was a time,
10 years.
10-year period where it was not used.
Yeah,
The progressives wanted it, and that's what we're probably seeing.
so 109. Yeah.
So, anyway, James has stuck his neck out. He's had to walk the dance between keeping the party alive, Julian as well, between doing a lawsuit, getting money, not getting the money. We've seen that people have wanted to support the party, but not support the lawsuit, and that's where we've taken that position. If we're going to support the lawsuit, we want to get this question answered in court, we need to fund it on our own. We can still get other ways to fund the party for our convention system and so forth, but it's important that we get the donations. So the big ugly in politics, it doesn't take 20 million to get a Senate seat in Utah. It only takes 12 million. We saw that last cycle. It might take that much this time. I don't know what it'll, maybe not as much, we'll see. But
North Carolina, 100 million.
it takes money to work in politics, and the Weber County's onus to get these questions answered is $5,500. So if you can make a pledge, you get friends to make a pledge, if you can help us raise the money, that's what we're here for, is to learn what we're doing, why we're doing it, why we're, up to, why the state party's even involved with this. I think James has laid out the arguments very well, very articulately. It is important that we get these constitutional questions answered. If we prevail, the legislature may take another swipe at it. They probably won't take a swipe at it until they have to, which I think if that stuff's not coming until August, there might be a few adjustments this time, probably not material, which would dilute the system for the next cycle. Some people in the next cycle just want to know the rules and they'll play by them. I've met with some people that are really concerned about what that is. They just want to know. So certainty helps everybody, but I know that it puts the party out of business if we go to the signature business. The party doesn't have a say over who even runs, and that's not that good for the party. So if we have any means or ways to help, we want to do that. So
I want to thank Noel for putting this together. We'll go anywhere, talk to any group, to explain this, but I'm encouraging each of you to take this information and one-on-one to your family, your friends, to help them to understand. It's the only way that we can counteract Count My Vote. We only have one tool, one weapon in our arsenal, and that is persuasion. Unlike Count My Vote, we can't threaten, we can't intimidate, all we can do is persuade our legislators, the public, party members, that as a private organization, there's this thing called the First Amendment that gives us the right to associate and determine who will represent us to the public. That's all we're asking. It's not voter access, it's not access to the ballot, it's simply we're a private organization, so we don't reach in and tell churches how to select their membership, leadership. The state should not reach in and tell us how to select ours. It just isn't done.
So, the one bill to support, besides the lawsuit, is Senator Jenkins' bill. It's big because that's where people in the party get to select people of the party. So, as a county party, we don't usually weigh in on things. I think we'll weigh in on that one pretty heavily to get Jenkins some support. I think it's going to be tough for him to get that out of committee. We need to find out what committee it's on, when the hearings are going to be, and make sure we show up down there and support that sucker, because that's the one thing about this. To me, it's just nuts. It's the non-members of an organization select. What if people selected the bishop in the ward and we just took everybody, not just the members, but they all voted? It just would never happen, right? We wouldn't even think of that. So I don't usually weigh in on bills. That one will be one I'm going to really support and push real hard for what Jenkins is doing. And the other one is the Brad successor has this crazy daylight savings bill. Why in the world we want that is beyond me. Good Lord. Those are two things that drive me nuts in this whole thing. I like doing activities after work. Our whole Weaver County economy is determined by recreation activities. Well, how are people going to ride their bikes on the bike trails if they don't have that extra hour of daylight? It's not going to happen. We're here, we got this county, we got the city trying to bring people in, and we have one legislator trying to shut down outdoor recreation after work. It's unbelievable to me. I don't get it. Our bike trails, our water recreation, our golf courses.
Maybe we can stick it back the other way.
We ought to go the other way and have 2 more hours of sunlight afterwards. That would be nice.
Leave it the same, so we don't flip back and forth. That's the worst.
And that's what people say, and they say they'll adapt, but they want us to put it on and not change it, which cuts us an hour of daylight, which affects our economy a lot. I think before you really decide you want that to happen, decide the economic impact it'll have on it for being an outdoor recreation hub. We're stuck in railroad town. Our leaders have given us this vision that will be an outdoor recreation center, and if you can't recreate after work, it just completely destroys that. And we're all in on outdoor recreation in Weaver County. And to move from that is not very good. We can't ride horses after work. It was our 3rd largest industry in Weaver County. And people need to be able to do that in the summer. And it's not just golf because I care about golf. I can go play golf at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock. For me, it doesn't matter. I play golf any time of the day I'm on. But it does matter to those industries and those people that have to work. So I'm going to weigh in on that sucker. I think it's nuts that we have somebody from Ledge 29 pushing them. And they'll hear from me every single day about that until they don't run that stupid bill again. And to pass Jenkins' bill.
Do we have a can?
No, but we can pass a can, we can put cash in. Julian has a glass.
Got a
Julian has a glass. We have a bag. We're gonna pass the bag.
So we make the check.
We made the check out to the county party, just designate that it's for SB54 defense, and anything that goes in there, we're gonna make sure. But reach deep, give us some money, help us out. Politics takes money, even if it's $5,000 or $5 million. We can't play without dough. And James needs Julie needs these guys have really struggled over this issue. It's caused a lot of problems for the party to raise money.
Now, any money that's not used for the lawsuit, this is only for the lawsuit, so any money that's not used, we are returning back to the counties, because we're raising it for this specific purpose, and when that purpose is exhausted and we're done, anything that's left over, we're sending back, because this is not for the operations of the state party, this is specifically for the lawsuit.
Now, to clarify, any donations under $50, you can just stick them in, but $50 and over, we need a little more information.
They got
Yes.
their name, address, and phone number.
Name, address,
Yeah.
phone number, occupation.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah,
Yes?
we do.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So
FEC reporting guidelines.
NSA already has it, but we'll give it to the FTC, or the Federal Election Commission. FEC, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so with nothing else, appreciate Julian and James coming in.
I would just say thank you to James. I think
You're welcome. Yeah.
most people don't realize what this really is, and I think my biggest concern right here is that since the bill passed last session, I think it's kind of dropped off the radar screen of the average person, and so I'm just grateful that our party is fighting all the way through this thing. I'm glad that it's not falling on deaf ears, that it's not dead, that you're fighting hard and working hard. Thank you for standing on the principles that have made this party great. We'll support you, but thank you for doing it, because I know it's hard to keep yourself propped up at times when you're getting beat up by the legislature.
Well, thanks, but keep in mind that, there's a strategy to all of this, and when you talk about something, it's when it's in play. So we have to really wait to the next legislative session. So our supporters in the legislature, because they have these huge microphones, they can also start articulating a lot of the points that we're making here. So then you'll have reporters reporting on that and start asking questions of count my vote. Is this really about trying to get moderates? And then they're going to have to start explaining their points. So we're going to be very aggressive in making sure the public truly understands what is going on here. And frankly, we would rather sue the legislature than a citizens initiative, because that would be some really tricky PR. Had the citizens initiative passed by a vote of the people, and then we had to sue the people, that's a much more difficult hurdle than suing legislators for passing the bill. So, But thanks again for putting this together.
One thing we found out, I gotta make an announcement. We've pushed our Lincoln Day dinner back 1 week. From the 9th, you gotta get the date. The reason why is there's a special event at the legislature, and it's the speaker's dinner and the president of the Senate's dinner, and we have that on the same day. Julian, we had the date before those guys too.
We did, yeah, I remember talking.
We had our date before Halloween last time,
Yeah.
and they jumped on top of Weaver County. So, give them one of these big.
We'll do it.
Give
So
me
where
one
are
of
we
those.
having, the
So we're
26th?
having it here the next week, okay?
The 26th.
26.
Yeah, so the 26th here, we were on the 19th,
You were.
but because it is the speaker's dinner, it's a big social event for the legislature. I mean, they would have to miss that to come here, or they'd have to blow us off to go there. And so if we can just push it to the next week, we want to do that. It'll still be here, the club can accommodate it, everything's good with that, so.
There's no conflicts that night, so you're good.
I did want to just
Okay.
mention this, that Josh Romney is speaking at our Elephant Club luncheon on next Thursday. And so that's a huge accomplishment, because that's a signal that the party is not, this crazy element, that That, so if you're able to attend that, the luncheon is $50, but we want to increase turnout. But Josh Romney will be speaking, and maybe he'll say some more about his dad. But this weekend, Jeb Bush is flying in to meet with Mitch Romney. I thought he was flying in this week. Which is it?
It's coming up. I mean, it's imminent today. I think it was.
So he did come in today?
That was supposed to be today.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. And so I guess they're going to discuss.
Well, I'm gonna go all out sharp and say, stay out of the bushes. Remember that, did you guys hear that?
He's speaking next Thursday, 11:30 to 1 at the Alta Club in Salt Lake City. That's our Elephant Club luncheon. And the governor will be there to give opening remarks.
$50 if you're not.
Yeah, if you're not a
Do you
member.
pay at the door?
Yeah. But we just ask that you RSVP by the
Tuesday.
But you can RSVP, if you want to go, you can RSVP to.
So
So,
have you had a chance to speak with Josh about this matter, and does he understand the caucus system here in Utah and what this really does?
well, Mitt Romney gave $100,000 to count my vote.
Oh. But that's why I'm asking if you had a test, because I think he's getting outside sources from Levitt and others, Bennett, that are close to him, but if he understood what's really happening, I think he'd have a different.
Well, the way it's been sold to them is we just want to increase voter participation, and they don't look beyond that. But we have to be careful. I mean, everyone says that, the Tea Party element or the more conservatives are the problems in the party. I'm like, they've been the easiest ones to deal with. You deal with these count my vote business people who have these huge egos and personalities, and you try to tell them, well, you're wrong on this. Oh, they've just been a nightmare. I mean, their feelings get hurt, and they just go. I have never seen such. I would gladly not have to engage them any day, because it's just they're accustomed to not hearing no. They want what they want, and that's just bottom line. You go do it, And it's like, no, if you're wrong, you're wrong. Let's find a better way. But they're not used to hearing that.
So two other things. Grandpa's never gonna lose. Japan had their lowest voter turnout in their last election, just so you guys know. It's not just this thing here we have 0 views on. And secondly, the State of the Union address ratings were the lowest we've had in the last 30 years. So I asked a friend if he saw it when I had breakfast with him on Wednesday morning, and her client, he said, no, I can't stand to listen to that guy. I mean, there's tons of reasons why voter turnout isn't what it is. I mean, who wants to hear that stuff, right? People are sick of it. They're sick of it in Japan. So,
Well,
anyway,
50% of Japanese don't engage in romantic activities either. Just
I
like
heard that in the last 30 days.
But during our revolutionary time, it was only 37% that were active in it anyway.
Right. So that's sometimes what it takes. Okay, guys, thanks for coming, and we'll press on.